Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. Thank you so much for watching. We are at the start of free agency for the 27-28 offseason. We've gotten through salary arbitration, and basically the Royals signed extensions with all of our players that were eligible for arbitration to avoid the actual arbitration hearings, with one exception. We did trade away a longtime pitcher Hayden Wisniewski, was due to make at least six. He was asking for $8 million this upcoming season, and just felt that as a kind of a long reliever and fill-in spot starter, that was getting expensive for what he was, which is, a slightly above at league average type pitcher. So we moved on from Wisniewski in trade. Basically signed all of the arbitration eligible players to 1-year extensions, with a couple of exceptions. Our starting catcher, MJ Melendez, we've signed to a 4-year deal, buying out his last year of arbitration and then 3 years of free agency. And then starting left fielder Sal Frelick, we bought out his last 3 years of arbitration and then signed him to a 8-year total contract. So buying out potentially 5 years of free agency with team options in the last 2 years in the Frelick contract and the last year in the Melendez contract. We front-loaded those a little bit, as you can see, which will hopefully avoid them becoming real anchors around our team and our finances in the future. But glad to have both of those players wrapped up. Melendez is very important. Great personality in the clubhouse. Very good defensive catcher, and his bat, in terms of his ratings profiles, is average-ish, but he has pretty much consistently been a plus bat over the course of his career, so hopefully he can keep producing at that level. And Frelick, especially with the departure of longtime center fielder Kyle Lewis, as well as right fielder Julio Rodriguez, needed to make sure that we kind of kept at least one solid bat in the outfield, and Frelick has really been good since he came over to us. Led the league in steals last season and then won the American League batting title this past season. He has been a very good offensive player for us and throughout the course of his career. Is fragile, so we're going to have to try to keep him healthy. Hopefully can get 120, 130 games out of him a year, but glad to have both of those guys on board with fairly reasonable contracts. So with those extensions to both Frelick and Melendez, we've got about $16 million to potentially spend in free agency, so clearly not going to be going at the top of the market. And we don't have a ton of holes to fill. Obviously, in the outfield, we're hoping that the likes of Jason Dominguez, who we picked up in the Rule 5 draft, Stephen Paulini, who has been with us as kind of a backup outfielder for several years, and then a couple of youngsters from AAA. Will Taylor, interested to see what the will be 25-year-old next season can do at the major league level. Looks like he could be a competent center fielder defensively, similar to Jason Dominguez. And then Junior Marin is one of the better prospects in our system. Looks like he could have a pretty decent bat, corner outfielder most likely. But he combined for 35 home runs between AA and AAA last year, with 122 runs driven in and a batting average over 300. So he has nothing else to prove in the minors. He'll be 24 next season. So hoping to layer in Will Taylor and Junior Marin, along with Dominguez, Frelick, and Paulini, and kind of see if between those guys and then also potentially Peyton Williams, we can piece together our outfield and DH positions. And then the real big addition for us will be the return of Trevor Rogers, who missed our entire championship season with a torn flexor tendon in his elbow last year. Got about another 3 to 4 months of recovery. Hopefully he will come back pretty close to 100%. And with Trevor Rogers and Spencer Bauer, we now have the last 2 AL Cy Young Award winners topping our rotation. So pretty confident that we will continue to have a pretty good pitching staff, even though there will be some departures, particularly of some relievers in addition to Wisniewski through free agency. And looking at the potential free agents, with the exception of Rodriguez, who we've talked about, we just can't afford. A lot of older players, not surprisingly. One player that we kind of highlighted at the end of the last episode that is a very intriguing free agent to us is Shi-Tong Kim, a second baseman who's coming over from Taiwan, only 22 years old. You can see he has potential to be a really interesting offensive player. Defensively, he's versatile. He can play second. He's kind of a natural second baseman, I would say. Could play him at third if you had to, although his arm is only average. You could play him at short if you needed to, although his range is not what you're looking for there. But he's got a good work ethic, got a real nice bat. He's 6'3", so you could definitely make him, I believe, into a really excellent defensive first baseman. He's durable as far as his injury proneness, and he's young, and there's no guarantee that he reaches this potential. But even if he is only kind of where he is today, he's still a pretty useful offensive player for an infielder. So I think we're going to look at him, in what I did see since the last episode was he actually only wants a minor league contract, which becomes a guaranteed major league contract if he makes the team. Obviously, he can opt for free agency if he doesn't sign with us. But I was kind of thinking I might be even willing to give the guy a major league contract, just because I think he looks like a major leaguer now, and he could become a really good major leaguer. We are scouting him. As you can probably see, it's going to take about 3 weeks. We're already at very high scouting accuracy, so I don't think too much is going to change. OSA sees him with a pretty similar profile to Travis Lee, our scout, so I don't think there's a ton of chance that it comes back and Travis Lee thinks the guy is a total disaster. But in the interest of maybe getting that scouting report from him before we have to make a decision, I think I'm going to underbid just a little bit, offer him that minor league with major league options, but just put it at $5 million. I doubt he'll go and sign with somebody else. He might not even accept that offer, but let's see. Yeah, he's willing to at least think about that offer. So that gives us some time to kind of have him think about things, have us hopefully get the scouting report back. Other than him, I'm not really going to dip my toes in anywhere right now. It's certainly a chance that even if we sign him, we'll still have, $10-ish million left. So we'll certainly be able to make some additions later in free agency, perhaps if prices get lower. But right now, going to kind of sit things out, monitor the situation, see if we get a scouting report back on Kin, and go from there. And some good news and some bad news for the Royals. Shi-Tong Kim does favor our offer. Haven't gotten the scouting report back on him yet. Looking forward to that. And not surprisingly, Julio Rodriguez is gone. Fan interest took a 5-point hit from 82 down to 77 with his departure. That will likely be the biggest hit we take this offseason, but we do have several other free agents out there that we're not going to be able to re-sign because we just don't want to have a bunch of $8, $9, $10 million relievers on the team. Don't think that's prudent for Kansas City. So we'll be taking a few more hits in terms of our fan interest, but hopefully nothing all that material. At this point, we are still above where we were. I believe we were 66 at the end, or near the end of the season. Then we got a boost to 76 when we won the championship. Signed several of our players to get up to 82, and now we're back down to 77. So, if we can keep fan interest, kind of in the low 70s, we'll still have gotten a 5-point boost as a result of winning the title last year, even though we're going to be losing some players in the coming weeks, without a doubt. Let's see exactly who Rodriguez signed with and how much he signed for. Was pretty quick, so I'm guessing it was a big contract. Signs with the Yankees. Not a shocker. the Yankees with the big money, and looks like $33 million for the next 5 years. And then he actually has an opt-out, and then just $30 million a year for the 3 years after that. So a big 8-year contract, $255 million for Mr. Rodriguez to join the New York Yankees. And we have gotten our scouting report back on Shi-Tong Kim. Still see him as 3 stars with 5-star potential, at least according to Travis Lee. Advanced approach at the plate, outstanding bat-to-ball skills, plus power potential, chance to be a run producer, quality defensive second baseman, immense talent that someday may be considered in conversations about the best players in the game. So the narrative is good. Looking at his profile, still looks potentially very interesting. And even if he only kind of is what he is today, he still is plus gap power, plus power, good at avoiding Ks, average at eye, and a little bit below average with contact, admittedly, which we'd prefer not to have. But given his age, given his high work ethic, and given what our scout thinks, I think he can definitely close some of these gaps between his current ability and his potential over the coming years. It says he's now looking for $9.8 million, though, so although he does still technically favor our offer, I'm guessing we're going to be hearing from him shortly about raising the amount that we've offered to him, which we would certainly consider doing, because I think he's a really interesting prospect and a lot younger, and I think for what he is, a lot more economical than a lot of these veteran American players that are out there right now. And interesting, even though it said he was looking for $9.8 million, Shi-Tong Kim has signed with us. So we've got a $5 million option on him. If he moves to the major leagues this year, we'll be paying him $5 million, but we get a free look at him in spring training. And we have lost Aaron Ashby. That's another hit to fan interest. He was a locally popular player that we had signed several years ago, and he went cross-state to the Cardinals. So looks like he's still staying relatively close to his home in Kansas City. But that is the other real big hit that we were anticipating to fan interest, and only knocks us down 2 points. So clearly he's not a Julio Rodriguez, but he has been a really good reliever for us over the years. But you can see he's signed for $8.1 million with only a 1-year deal with the Cardinals. But has really been productive over the course of his major league career. 108 ERA plus, 87 FIP minus. But he started out his career with Milwaukee, and they were using him as a starter, and he was kind of getting banged around a lot as a starter. We turned him into a pure reliever and kind of forced him into a relief role, and you can see he had ERAs under 2.50 in 3 of his 5 years with us, and his highest ERA ever was a 3.53. So he was a very effective left-handed arm out of the bullpen for us. We'll definitely miss not having him around, but as I mentioned earlier, with players like him and Nick Anderson and JT Ginn and some of the other relievers we have who are free agents at this point, paying some of those guys $7, $8, $9 million a year just doesn't seem like something that's the right decision for the Royals, in my view. And with Shi-Tong Kim locked up, we're going to go back and increase our scouting budgets kind of to the level that we normally want them to be, where we were last year. We're actually going to bump up development one more notch to $33 million. I did not do that properly. If I could hit enter, that would help. So we've still got, money for free agents if we want. As I've talked about, I don't think it's going to be a real active free agent year for the Royals, but we can clearly modify that, cut those numbers back down if we need to. We've also got $9 million set aside in our draft budget, which should be just about enough. $5 million for international amateurs. Want to kind of keep this farm system cranking at a pretty high level to hopefully deliver some big-time players to the major leagues over the next several years that can kind of keep this middle market, at this point, Kansas City Royals team competitive for as long as possible. And another week, another expensive veteran moving on. Trevor Story signed with the Twins for $19.2 million for the next 2 years, and then $16.2, so $54.6 million over 3 years. Recall that we had a $25 million option on him that we declined after the season. He was kind of a part-time player for us. You can see we took another couple-point hit to fan interest, which isn't great, but we kind of knew we'd be moving on from him. Ricardo Cabrera is who we have penciled in to play second base this year after we move on from both Trevor Story and before him Nico Horner. And then obviously we now have the optionality of Shi-Tong Kim as a potential second baseman and infielder for us. So, obviously would love to have a fantasy team here filled with tons of players with no constraints as far as salary, but that's just not the reality of what we're dealing with the Royals. And the next thing the Royals have coming up is the Rule 5 draft in a few days. I'm looking at Rule 5 eligible players. Nothing too exciting. We got a couple of 2.5-star players that are eligible, 32 and 29-year-old relievers, if someone really wants to keep them. A Peyton Gray, who looks like a average-ish major league pitcher, or a Jackson Smeltz, who may not even be quite average, although he is a lefty. If someone wants to keep them on their major league roster all year, that's absolutely fine. Do have a couple other younger players to think about that, have that same kind of potential, but given their youth, maybe someone to put onto the 40-man roster. We'll take a look and spin through them. If there's anyone interesting, we may add them since we do have room with only 35 people on the 40-man roster now, but should be an opportunity for us to maybe add a player or two that is interesting with very little risk, and I don't think there's anyone that we're going to be too devastated by if we happen to lose in the Rule 5 draft. And we actually do have a couple younger players that are interesting. I don't know that we need to protect them. If we lose them, we lose them. Jackson Chourio kind of profiles as an average-ish major league hitter. He's really kind of only a first baseman defensively, though. Just got up to AAA for the first time this past season. He'll be 24 next year. Did hit well with a 4.62 average in AAA, but hit only 2.57 in AA. And he is the player that we picked up in the trade with Milwaukee. We dumped Daniel Cabrera, who had no options left. Picked up Tyler Black, a second baseman, as well as Chourio as a throw-in in that deal. Cabrera had no options left as opposed to Black and Chourio, who both have 3 option years left. So I don't know that we need to protect him. He was less interesting than Black to us in that trade, but as I said, he looks like an average major league first baseman, so perhaps someone's willing to bring him up from basically AA to the majors. Danny Estrada, 22-year-old center fielder, not much of a hitter, hasn't been above A-ball for us and really not that great defensively, low work ethic, definitely will not be protecting him. Ross Highfill is a catcher, good personality, average-ish catcher ability. He can play a lot of different defensive positions. Doesn't look like he's going to have too much of a bat. He's already 24 years old, never been above Class A ball, and he hit 185 there last year. So he could eventually maybe become a backup catcher, but I don't know that he's someone that we would protect and put on the 40-man. Elijah Lambros, another center fielder, a bit better batting profile, and honestly a little bit better defensively. He is already 25 years old, though. Never been above Double A. Hit 270 in Double A last year. Not a ton of power. Kind of think that Will Taylor and Jason Dominguez are better options for us at center field now, so I don't think that we would protect him. Then Henry Ramos, 23-year-old left fielder, is interesting. Looks like he could be a average-ish, maybe a little better than average major league bat. He's the definition of a corner outfielder, though. And again, he hasn't been above A ball. He did hit 299 with 13 homers and 86 driven in, 36 doubles. Last year in Single A, he was 22 years old most of the season, is 23 now. To me, Ramos and Jackson Chorio are the only ones to consider protecting, and I think that I will add both of them to the 40-man just because we have space. We've got only 35 people on the 40-man right now, so I don't know that we would have lost either of them, but they are players who could eventually become useful for us, so we'll put them on the 40-man, and we've still got plenty of room to add more people either through the Rule 5 draft and or free agency with 3 spots left on the 40-man. And then obviously there is opportunity for some of these players towards the end of the 40-man roster for us to DFA them if we need to open up some additional capacity down the line. But we'll at least try to protect those guys through the from the Rule 5 draft in the next couple of days. And we're now at the Rule 5 draft. Gotten to our pick. Our scout suggests we go after Daniel Montesino, a right fielder. Looks like an average-ish batting profile. Does have a little bit of pop in his bat. Not all that great defensively. Spent most of last year in Double A, where he did hit 24 homers, batted 256. Little time in Triple A, where he hit 289 and 38 at bats. So solid prospect. Almost 24 years old. Looking at that batting profile, it's actually not all that different than one of the guys that we just moved on to our 40-man, who I can't even remember who it was. His name wasn't Jackson Chorio, who was the outfielder. Oh, Henry Ramos. Kind of a similar batting profile. Ramos doesn't have as much home run power. Ramos profiles a little bit better defensively. We could add him. We could add Montesino to the team, but I'm going to take a look at the other players out there just because that is what our scout suggests. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best. Danny Jimenez, obviously just looking purely at stars, stands out. He's a 34-year-old, though. Good stuff, not great movement and control. Pitched only 2/3 of an inning in the majors last year, but was respectable in AAA. Obviously, has spent some time in the majors, parts of a lot of seasons in the majors, actually, with a 108 ERA plus, 103 FIP minus. So he's been an average-ish major league reliever. I don't think there's anything particularly exciting there. Anyone else with high potential? 22-year-old Angel Menegas, third baseman who has never been above high A ball and only hit 218 in high A ball this past year, but looks like he has potential to develop into a decent offensive player, and he's got good work ethic, a good personality. Defensively, he doesn't really have a position, though. His infield range is awful. He's only 5'10", so even at first base, he's not all that great. Looks like, he does have a gun for an arm, so he will, if he can get to the ball, if the ball's hit right at him, he's going to make the play on it. It's just that his range is awful. Not good at turning double plays. but good error and arm ratings. I don't see us having a spot for him on the major league roster. It would just kind of be taking him for the sake of taking him, and then if we had a ton of injuries in spring training, he might make the team. He's interesting, at least, though, because he's young. So we're going to spend a little more time digging through these players and figure out whether maybe a Montesino or a Benegas or nobody is who we end up taking in the Rule 5 draft this year. And actually, as I've dug through the Rule 5 draft, I've kind of found a couple of middle relievers that look mildly interesting to me. Connor Prilip in the Red Sox organization right now. It's decent stuff, decent control, not much movement, 3 solid pitches. He's almost 27 years old, has spent decent amount of time in the majors over the past several years and put up a 1.14 ERA plus and a 90 FIP minus. He's a left-handed pitcher, and he does profile as a bit better against lefties than against righties. So he is interesting to us. And the other pitcher who is interesting is Joey Gerber, 30-year-old, will be 31 by next year. 2 really nice pitches with a fastball and slider. Good stuff, acceptable movement and control. And honestly, over the course of his major league career, pretty similar production to Prilip with 107 ERA plus, 90 FIP minus. He's a little bit older, and he's a right-hander. Prilip is a lefty. He's on a minor league contract rather than a major league contract. I think we're going to pick up Connor Prilip and give him a chance to see what he can potentially do. We'll auto draft again, see what our scouting director recommends. Still suggesting we go to Daniel Montesino, and you can see that Gerber and Danny Jimenez are still out there. Angel Benegas is still out there too. He's intriguing to me. I don't think he's going to make the team, especially with the recent addition we made. We've got a lot of infielders right now. It's hard to imagine him being on the major league roster, but good personality, decent bat, potentially. OSA is a little lower on him, I would say, than our Scout is, but I think our Scout is better than the OSA. I'm intrigued by Benegas. I don't think he's going to make the team, but let's bring him into camp and see what we have with him. So we're going to draft Benegas and then move on. We could still potentially add one more player. Scouting director still shouting at us to take Daniel Montesino. He's a mediocre corner outfielder with an average-ish bat. He is a little younger, but I just don't see him making our team, given that we want to get Marin and Taylor and see what those guys can do at the major league level. And I think that they're both better prospects than he is. Still have the option to potentially bring Joey Gerber in also. I do like his arm, and he's been a pretty productive major league pitcher. Given the fact that we're probably going to be losing some more relievers, I think I'm actually going to pick up Gerber, and that will do it for us in this draft, because right now we are at our 40-man roster. We've got 40 people on it, so we very well could be cutting some of these players even before we get to spring training if we make some late free agent acquisitions and try to do some bargain basement shopping, but at least we've given ourselves a few potential lottery tickets in the Rule 5 draft here in 2027. And our Royals accounted for 75% of the players picked in the draft, with Prilip, Benegas, and Joey Gerber. Only other player picked was before we had an option to pick. The Nationals picked up Seth Brown from the Blue Jays. And another expensive pitcher is gone. JT Ginn signed actually for less than he had been looking for, just a 1 year, $5.1 million contract with the White Sox. Never totally fit in, was a disaster as a starter for us. Then he did do a decent job out of the bullpen, but a 7-13 record with a 4.65 ERA just didn't work out for him last year in his one season in Kansas City. You can see that fan interest is now down to 71. So we've taken a few hits with some of these free agents that we have lost. We kind of knew it was going to happen, but we've got money to add a few people in the coming weeks if we want to, so we can hopefully find some players who will help the back end of our roster and also maybe give us a little boost in fan interest as we get closer to the beginning of spring training. And honestly, although we have lost these free agents, I think the Rule 5, the two pitchers we picked up are people who could potentially be just as productive as some of the guys that we've lost. Not all of them, but, I don't think we're in a real bad position compared to where we were last year at this time. Do we have the ammo to pick up a Julio Rodriguez as a rental this year? Probably not, and it's also not every year that a young dynamic player like that is going to be available before the trade deadline. But I don't feel bad about where we are, even though it's been a pretty quiet off season for the Royals thus far. We've simmed ahead to late January, getting ready for preseason activities to begin in about a month away from spring training. Still, a similar list of players out there, older players looking for pretty big money. There are some popular-ish players out there which we could go after. Ramon Laureano could certainly help us defensively as an outfielder. He's an excellent defensive right fielder. I just don't know that at this point in his career at 33 years old, I don't know that his bat is really all that much better than a Stephen Paulini or a Jason Dominguez or a Will Taylor, or certainly not as good as Marin, who we want to see what he can do at the major league level. So just don't see us having a real role on the team for him, and don't want to waste $6 million-ish on him. Corey Knebel is just kind of an arm in the bullpen. He is very popular, though, so that would probably give us a little boost, but he would just be a middle reliever for us, so we could certainly add him, but it would really be, just as the 11th, 12th, or 13th arm in our rotation, and really just kind of doing it for the popularity bump more than anything else. Jonathan India, also popular, but I just don't see us having a role for him in the middle infield at this point. I guess the one thing we could do is move on from Jose Barrero. But even if we move on from Jose Barrero, at this point, moving on from Barrero, likely in India would obviously be an upgrade for him. But, Barrero, we're only paying 45% of his contract. So we're only paying Barrero $4.5 million at this point, and he'll be a free agent after this year. But even if we move on from Barrero right now, Shi-Tong Kim is the guy that we're going to be putting into that spot. So that's something that may happen anyways. I just don't know that we really need to bring Jonathan India into the mix also, especially at $12.5 million a year that he's still looking for. The last real popular player is Sandy Alcantara, but he profiles as an average-ish major league starter at this point, 32 years old, and he's also still looking for pretty big money at $12 million a year. So I think we're going to make an offer to Corey Knebel, and really it's just because he's popular. I know that seems like a weird reason to add somebody, but has obviously had a long major league career, 114 ERA plus, 85 FIP minus, so he's definitely been better than average pitcher over the course of his career. But last year with a 93 ERA plus and an 88 FIP minus, profiling is maybe closer to an average-ish type pitcher. Again, I don't think he's going to make a huge difference for us, but he is someone who's popular. We've got some money to spend, and I would like to, given that we were 66 fan interest at the end of last season, we've basically only gotten a 5-point bump from the World Series with all the players we've lost at this point. So would like it to be a little higher than that. Hopefully, we'll see if we sign him. Right now, we're projected to sell 16,500 16.5K season tickets, if I could explain that accurately. At the very least, it'll be kind of interesting to say if you pick up a somewhat popular player right before the preseason, what type of impact that one player can have on our ticket sales. It's at least giving us a little test of that. One little other piece of information that hopefully will make us a better player over time. So we'll see if he'll sign with us for $2 million, a lot less than he's looking for, and he's certainly willing to think about it. So we'll see what happens with Corey Knebel. And we have locked up Corey Knebel to that $2 million contract. Obviously don't expect him to have a huge impact on the team, but you can see it did give us a bump of 1 point in fan interest, and we're now projected to sell 16,600 season tickets. So it looks like it might mean another 100 season tickets for us bringing on Corey Knebel. So apparently there's a lot of fans of that middle reliever here in the Midwest. And we're now right before spring training. Sandy Alcantara, Zach Eflin, and Sixto Sanchez, along with Jeffrey Springs, are kind of the top-rated players still out there. Sixto Sanchez, at 29 years old, with his pitching profile, is mildly intriguing to us. Over the course of his career, he's probably kind of underperformed the way he looks in terms of his ratings, with a 98 ERA plus, 96 FIP minus, pretty much a league average type pitcher, and he's wrecked physically. That said, he's not a bad pitcher. I would take him over Zach Eflin, who over the course of his career has been a 93 ERA plus, 104 FIP minus, kind of a bit below average, also almost 4 years older. Sandy Alcantara, 111 ERA plus, but 99 FIP minus, so he's been, maybe a little above average, very, very little bit. He's not looking for as much money, but I don't think he's quite as good a pitcher at this point. And then Jeffrey Springs is injured, still recovering from a torn flexor tendon for 4 months. So I don't think he's at the top of the list of players that we want to bring in. If we could get Sanchez for a real decent contract, and you can see we've only got $7.2 million. So we're going to try to lob out a real low offer to Sixto Sanchez. He's looking for 3 years at $10.2 million a year. So I think he's going to be rather insulted when we offer him. We're not even going to. We'll offer him 6. He's not going to go for that, but we'll offer him $6 million if he does pitch 160 innings. No, we're going to make it 162. He's got to qualify for the ERA title to get that $500,000 bonus. Sure, if you win the Cy Young Award, we'll give you some money, buddy, but not expecting that. I don't think he's going to go for it, but at least worth taking a shot here with him being unemployed. Spring training is about to begin. Not really what he was expecting. Still looking for a 3-year deal. All right, well, we're not ready to do that right now. So looks like we kind of know the team that we are going to be heading into spring training with at this point. And we are at the start of spring training. Most interesting thing, Trevor Rogers still has about 4 days till he's healthy from that torn flexor tendon in his elbow. Will be interesting to see if after that serious injury he is still kind of normal as far as his durability, or whether he will have now kind of be considered fragile. So we'll see what he looks like when he comes back. We do have Shi-Tong Kim in camp, and we're gonna throw him over at first base and see what he does there. As I talked about, seems like second base is kind of his natural position to me. Doesn't quite have the arm for third base, doesn't quite have the range for shortstop, although he can play both of those positions in a pinch. But he could ultimately be an upgrade over Zach DeCenzo at first base. So I'm going to see if he can maybe pick up the position here in spring training. And then we'll have to make a decision on him for the long term. Got a lot of infielders in camp, as you can see. I think not going to have a lot of real tough decisions to make. It's really going to be, Jose Barrero, Shi-Tong Kim, what we do kind of for one of those last infield spots. And certainly if Kim is able to pick up first base pretty quickly, which I think he will, given his skill set, his size, and his age. I think it's going to be awful hard for us not to have him on the Major League roster this year, given the potential he has. And not surprisingly, after losing a season to that torn flexor tendon in his elbow, Trevor Rogers is now kind of fragile as far as injury proneness. He's also 30 years old. So we are going to put him on a 90 pitch count right now, similar to where we have Spencer Bauer at this point. Not optimal that our top two pitchers are both fragile, but they've also the last two Cy Young winners in the American League. So hopefully we can keep the two of them healthy and well. If we can get a full season out of both of those guys, I think we're going to be a pretty tough team for the rest of the American League to deal with. You can see, obviously, we're going with a six-man rotation here in spring training just to get a look at as many people as possible. Zach Jacobs is the one who kind of slots in at number 6, the youngster who pitched one brilliant game with the Royals at the end of 2026, but then spent all of 2027 in Omaha. He is definitely in the mix to have a spot on the Major League staff, whether in the rotation or more likely, in the bullpen this season. Would like to see what he can do at the Major League level over a whole season. And a very serious injury for the guy who was going to take over as our starting center fielder, Jason Dominguez, the Rule 5 draft pick from over a season ago, spent the whole year on our Major League team. Torn PCL, out for 7 months, so maybe we get him back for the playoffs if we make the playoffs, but not optimal to be losing the guy who we thought was going to be our starting center fielder. So we are going to place him on the 60-day IL, and I think that's going to put the youngster Will Taylor is going to be right in the mix now. He's probably, look, you can see as far as his ability to play the position, he's kind of average, got acceptable range, error, and arm, not much of a hitter, but we'll see what the roster looks like. We don't have a natural center fielder with Jason Dominguez out. Will Taylor was kind of the guy we were thinking would be our backup. So I guess the positive thing is it's only March 3rd. We do have some money potentially available for free agents. So we'll see what the roster looks like. We could also free up a little more money if we look to trade away Jose Barrero, which given that Shi-Tong Kim has quickly adapted to playing first base over these first couple of weeks of spring training. I think that unless we have an injury, Barrero's roster spot is definitely in jeopardy, and we would free up some money if we were able to trade him away. I don't think we're going to get a starting center fielder for him by any stretch of the imagination, but at least can free up some money so we could potentially take on a little bit more salary if we do find a center fielder, either later in spring training or more likely in the regular season that we'd like to add to the roster if we don't think that Taylor is hitting well enough to be the long-term answer for us there. Doesn't look like there are any real interesting center field options available on free agency right now. Anthony Alford, maybe a little better defensively than Taylor, maybe. Just not much of a bat either. Don't see any need to bring the 33-year-old on board. Michael Hermosillo, similar defensively, probably a little worse offensively, wrecked physically. He does have the home run power, also 33 years old. So I don't think we're going to find the answer in free agency right now. Could obviously bring Kike Hernandez back after he's been gone several years, but he's not as good defensively, although he probably is a little better offensively than Taylor is at this point in his career. But I think at least for the near term and to start the season, we'll go with Taylor, see how he does, and if we can't need to make a trade down the line, we certainly can. Not a lot of players on the trading block right now as far as center fielders. Defensively, J.J. Bleday is the blah. Keel Badu, a little better defensively in center field. Not a horrible bat. He's making $15.6 million, so I can see why the Tigers would be happy to get rid of him. He's certainly an option down the line, but I don't feel like we have to do anything right away. And at least over the near term, Byron Nichols is actually going to put Sal Frelick in as our center fielder. I don't know that that's a great decision. We are trying to give Junior Marin a little bit of time at left field just to ensure that he's in the lineup. So perhaps that's why. Actually, let's see what if we stop forcing the youngster Marin to get some playing time, will that push Frelick back to a more natural position? No, he's still going to play Frelick in center field. That's real interesting. And he does have Will Taylor in right, while Sal Frelick is in center against left-handed batters. It does not make sense to me. I am going to override that at least against left-handed batters to get Will Taylor a little time in at center field. Actually, it doesn't seem like that roster is totally working the way it should. Okay, there we go. That's updated now. I don't know how I feel about Sal Frelick being our everyday center fielder. That is really interesting. I don't like any of this. Paulini's not good defensively either, but at least I'm going to switch things up against lefties and put Will Taylor in center field, move Frelick back to left. Yeah, given the arm that he has, we'll put him in left, and then that'll put Paulini in right. At least see what those guys do there. But we're obviously going to be piecing things together with the loss of Jason Dominguez until we can maybe make another acquisition down the line. And we have made it to the end of spring training. Dominguez was the most significant injury. Backup catcher Fernando Caldera, who was going to be in AAA anyways, out with an oblique strain. We'll send him down to AAA when he's healthy. Melendez, obviously the starter, and Reese McGuire is the backup for now. But if either of them have an injury, Caldera will likely be the one who comes up to join us. Junior Marin right now dealing with a little bit of knee inflammation. We've obviously got to get to the point now where we get the 39 players who are still in camp with us down to 26. So we're going to be focused on making those final cuts here and see what the 26-man roster looks like as we head into the 2028 season. I think that figuring out our 13 position players is going to be a little easier than the pitchers, given that we just got a lot more pitchers to think about. Angel Benegas was the Rule 5 pick. I like his batting profile, just that he doesn't really have a position defensively. He's slow. He's never been above high A ball. I just don't see any reason to keep him around. He's not that good defensively, so we are going to send him back to the Nationals. Tyler Black, who we picked up in the trade with Milwaukee, basically picked them up. He's got 2 option years left. Another player who defensively doesn't really have a position. Not a horrible bat. He could certainly have a role to play with us. May look to see if we can get him to become proficient at first base down in AAA when there's less pressure than playing at the major league level. But we are going to demote him to Omaha, and now we've just got one decision left to make, and it really comes down to Jose Barrero, utility infielder with a decent bat, can play competent defense at several positions, or Henry Ramos, who you may remember we added to the Major League roster before the Rule 5 draft. He's never been above A-ball. It's hard for me to imagine that he's going to get what he needs at 23 years old being at the major league level. Does look like he could have a potentially decent bat, but I think we've got to put Ramos down in the minors for the time being. So we are going to demote him to Double-A at least for the next short term. Obviously, we're going to spend some time after this that we won't bother going through in the episode figuring out our minor league system, and it's possible that we may start him out in AAA, but I just think the jump from single A to major leagues is going to be too much for him. So a little light on outfielders right now with just Marin, Paulini, Frelick, and Will Taylor, but in a pinch, Peyton Williams can play left field for us, although he's kind of our everyday DH. Would it be nice? We probably should have trained. Zach DeCenzo is similar to Peyton Williams. He's a mediocre defensive outfielder, so I don't know that we really need him there. I think there's potentially more value with just his versatility to play second or third for us. It does look like Shi-Tong Kim is going to be our starting first baseman, so very interested in seeing what he's able to do for us after we signed him as a free agent. Looking at, after those cuts, what Byron Nichols wants the lineup to be. The one thing that I really disagree with him about, that I may have to override him on, is he's insistent at playing Frelick at center field rather than Will Taylor. Frelick is 35 kind of as far as his position rating, and 55, 60, and 50 as far as range, error, and arm. Will Taylor, on the other hand, is 50 as far as his position rating and 60 in range, error, and arm. I think he's just a better defensive option there. I guess can see in the early stages of the season how Byron Nichols plays it and whether he consistently brings in Will Taylor as a defensive substitute late in the games. Maybe that's acceptable. Don't know. We'll be giving that some more thought as we get close to the start of the regular season in 3 days. But right now, we've got our 13 position players. Now we've got to focus on getting 22 pitchers down to 13. So that will be a little bit more of a task for us. And you may remember we recently signed Corey Nabel for the popularity bump. I don't think that he's going to make the 26-man roster, so we are actually looking to just dump him, kind of have a potential to trade him to the White Sox for Forrest Whitley, who is not really that great a pitcher, not a great personality, but he's making the major league minimum, so at least we'll free up some money making that trade. So we are going to look to ship Nabel out of town. Didn't work out, but no harm, no foul if we're able to get his contract off of our books. And as we're getting closer to our final cuts, both of the Rule 5 guys that we picked up in the last draft, Joey Gerber, a solid profile, and he's been a good major league reliever, and Connor Prelip, similar, also has been a good major league pitcher over the course of his career, but we have got a loaded pitching staff, and we do want to finally this season see what players like Zach Jacobs, who has actually been slotted in to our rotation ahead of Ricky Vanasco, who won 13 games for us last year out of the rotation, which just shows the I don't know if that's the right decision by Nichols, and we'll, revisit that if Jacob struggles. But it just shows you how good our pitching is. Tyler Bosma, who has briefly been up, actually, spent most of 2026, actually the whole season up with us, got caught in a numbers game last year. But with his stuff, he put up a 3.38 ERA at AAA Omaha last year. Want to see what he can do at the major league level. So unfortunately, both Gerber and Prelip are going to be sent back to their teams. So Rule 5 draft this year gave us 3 players and some optionality, but no players that we're actually going to keep. And you can see that cuts us down to 14 players. So we still have one further difficult decision to make as far as what this high-powered pitching staff is going to look like as we head into the regular season. And right now, looking at those 14 pitchers, of the 9 bullpen arms, we've got 5 lefties and 4 righties, which may push us towards sending one of the lefties down. Austin Roberts and Ricky Vanasco are obviously on the team. RJ Dabovich is obviously on the team. He's been an all-star each of the last 2 years. If we were to send down a righty, it would be Will Klein. Incredible stuff, very good movement. Pitched fine when he was up in 2026, got caught in the numbers game last year, but put up a 2.39 ERA in Omaha. He has nothing left to prove there, but Klein, if we send down a righty, would be the one that goes down. Taking a look at the lefties, Scott Kobos has been our lefty specialist for several years. Brilliant last year with a 1.87 ERA. Don't really want to send him down. Mackenzie Gore, even though last year he spent time, particularly in the playoffs, he was not on our 26-man. He received Cy Young votes last year. Hard for us to send him down. Really kind of thought that with some of the departures that we allowed to happen in the bullpen, that was going to guarantee that Mackenzie Gore could be up all year, and think he's a pretty valuable pitcher, so really don't want to send him down. Will Goebel was an all-star for us last year, 3.36 ERA over 112 and a third innings. Chris Bubich, guy we brought onto the team. I hate to say it because we just brought Bubich back after trading him away a couple years ago, but I would think that his spot is in a little bit of jeopardy. And then Tyler Bosma, who we already talked about, he just doesn't have anything else left to prove at AAA, and he's 28 years old at this point. We've got to see what we have with him. So I think it's Klein or Bubich. And honestly, I don't know that I want a bullpen with 5 left-handed arms and only 3 right-handed arms. So I think that means that Klein stays up, which means that I think Bubich is caught in the numbers game. He's been such a productive pitcher when he's been with the Royals. He hasn't been that good at other places. He fits in really well in the Royals, but he's 30 years old now. We did just sign him last offseason to a relatively modest 3-year contract. He does have option years left. I'm sure he's going to refuse a minor league assignment, which is what happened a few years ago when we had to trade him, but we're going to try to send him down, and he refuses to be demoted. So I just don't see any point in sending Tyler Bosma down. Will Goebel was an all-star last year. Mackenzie Gore has been paying his dues. He got first place votes for the Cy Young Award last year, even though we had a tough time keeping him on the major league roster because our pitching is so deep. And then Scott Kobos has been so good, is a lefty specialist for us. I think we've got to look to trade Bubich, unfortunately. And there are some options on the trade market for Bubich. Nothing incredibly compelling. Andy Rodriguez, who's a solid backup catcher, is probably the most interesting, but he's not great defensively, and he's also making $4.5, $5, and $6 million the next 3 years. So I think we're gonna try to put something around Peyton Henry, who is a somewhat better defensive catcher, not quite as good a bat, but importantly, he does still have one option year left, so we could put him into AAA as an insurance policy. Like I said, I don't love trading Bubic, but our pitching staff is still pretty loaded, and I just don't think that 5 left-handers and 3 right-handers is the right ratio for our bullpen arms. I'd rather have that be a 4-4 split, even though we only have one lefty in the starting rotation with Trevor Rogers. So it's kind of weird to be sending Bubic away again, but when he refuses those minor league assignments, he kind of forces our hand. And we're going to send Bubic to Miami for Peyton Henry. They're also going to give us $1.3 million in cash. Apparently Theo Epstein is the GM of the Marlins now, which is kind of interesting. So we are going to go ahead and make that trade. Don't feel great about it, but Bubic once again finds himself in the midst of a numbers game here with the Royals. That gets our team down to 26 players as we prepare for the regular season. So we'll take a look at preseason predictions right now and see what the prognosticators think when they run through a simulation of this season for us. How are these Royals going to look as we try to defend a World Series championship this year? And interesting, 86 wins projected for the Royals, which would once again give us the AL Central and put us in the playoffs. But you can see that's well behind the Yankees with 97 wins and the Rangers with 88 wins. So it looks like the parity that kind of reigned last year in the American League is largely expected to persist. Not surprisingly, the Yankees get a big boost, and the Royals look like we're a little bit down because of the Yankees taking Julio Rodriguez off of our roster onto their roster. You can see the Yankees look absolutely loaded offensively with 3 players projected to be among the top 10 hitters. Among the Royals, Bobby Witt Jr., expected to have a bounce-back year, at least through that simulation. 51 steals from Bobby Witt Jr., 24 homers, 297 average. We would certainly take that through the course of the season. Spencer Bauer in this simulation was 14-10 with a 3.50 ERA, which would be a nice follow-up year for him to his Cy Young Award last year. So we will see what happens in the real 2028 season going forward, and we will cover all of that in our upcoming episodes. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.